There is a new book out, and it is extraordinary in its breadth and its reach and its panorama of history. It is entitled Terrorism and the Illuminati, a 3,000-year history written by David Livingstone. This book is unique. It is mind-boggling when you look at the table of contents alone. It starts out, let me just read a few of the chapter titles for you to give you an idea of what this is entailing. The Lost Tribes of Israel, Chapter 1. The Kabbalah, Chapter 2. Mithraism, Chapter 3. If I'm pronouncing that right, we'll find out in a minute. Gnosticism, Chapter 4. The Anglo-Saxons, 5. The Ashkenazi, 6. The Carolingian, well, we'll let David pronounce that and explain more about that. The Assassins, the Holy Grail, the Wars of the Roses, Holy Roman Empire, Rosicrucians and Freemasons, the Illuminati. It goes on and on and on. This is an amazing. You could probably study all year at a university and not come close to handling all this material, but it's in one book called Terrorism and the Illuminati, and David Livingstone is here. Welcome to the program, David.
Thank you very much.
How long did it take you to do this? A couple of months?
Yeah. Understated. No, it took me 4 years to write, I think.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but it also required it's my second book, and my first one took quite a few years of research, and it was very helpful to write this book. Helpful
how?
Because what I did in my first book was research the history of the occult. I tried to. There's a lot of books about the occult, but a lot of because mainstream scholars tend to avoid the subject entirely.
Now, when you say occult means secret or hidden. That's what it means. A lot of people think it necessarily means satanic, evil, all the rest of it. It does to a large degree, but occult by definition means secret or hidden.
Right. But generally, it's also understood to refer to, an entire tradition, a very old tradition that incorporates, a certain group of beliefs, usually tied to magic, astrology, and things of that
sort.
Sure.
Some would call it satanic domination of the masses.
Sure.
Lots of things.
Right.
The chapter titles are extraordinary. This does look like a book that took every bit the 4 or 5 years you say.
Right.
It ends with chapter 27, after going through 3,000 years of history, bringing us up to date.
Yeah.
And the chapter is entitled Total War.
Yeah.
You do spend a lot of time on Wahhabi, the Wahhabism influence. And is it true that Wahhabism is an invention of world Zionism at some point? Do they have a hand in it?
It definitely seems to be the case. It's there's a memoir that was written by supposedly the agent who was responsible for creating the sect, and this memoir explains exactly how he went about trying to find the character who was going to fit this part, and and the ends that they were trying to achieve by creating this sect. It was all part of basically trying to divide and rule the Ottoman Empire at the time.
I see. And for those of you who don't know, the Saudi Arabian royal family and so forth, those are Wahhabis.
Well, exactly it. I mean, back in the 1700s, the Ottoman Empire was huge and controlled, a significant part of Europe.
We should let me interrupt you just for a second to point out that something which usually goes missing, and that is the fact that the Arabs at one point, at the height of the Ottoman Empire and even before, had achieved levels of sophistication, competence, and brilliance in the arts, the sciences, letters that no one really understands.
Absolutely.
They dominated the entire Mediterranean and southern European area of the world for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right. And this is precisely the point, that if you were to study the true history of what's called Western civilization, it would take you, after Rome, it would take you to the Arab civilization.
Correct.
Followed by the Turkish civilization, then to Europe. And it's one continuous trajectory. But there's a very good reason why it's omitted. It has to be omitted. And this largely goes back to, this is what I cover in the first chapter of my book, is the rewriting of history. And this is something that was orchestrated by the tax-exempt foundations at the beginning of the century, and who perceived that they needed to rewrite history if they were going to continue to maintain their control.
And the name of that tax-exempt foundation?
It would be, there's two of them primarily. There's the General Board of Education, which was Rockefeller's foundation, and the other one was Carnegie's Institute for Advancements in Teaching.
And they literally went back through history and rewrote it. They revised it, and it became part of the curricula in all the schools.
It became what's called Western history.
It's just that easy, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
The winners write the story, and I often wonder, you're supposed to be able to learn from history, but when history has been rewritten and corrupted and perverted so much, how much can we really legitimately learn from history?
The thing is that, how control works, it's not so much that they can bury the information, it's that they don't refer to it.
It's called the lie of omission.
Right. So, the libraries are full of this information. Any university library is full of all this information.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that there's no professor who's going to tell you to read it. You have to, first of all, you have to trust your own suspicions, and then you have to pursue them.
That's
and then usually
true.
To the facts.
So
Yeah.
true. So very, very true. Let me go just pick a few chapters here. Again, if you click on David Livingstone and go right to his website, you'll see the book. This is an amazing book. Now, you have a video. Do you have a video version of this book?
I don't, not yet.
Okay, I can't even imagine trying to put this into a DVD form.
Right.
It would have to be a quick survey.
That'd be a quick survey, yeah.
Yeah. People often talk about the Kabbalah.
Right.
But very few people have asked to define the Kabbalah. They couldn't.
Right.
They don't know what it is.
No.
Let's tell them.
Right. The Kabbalah is the secret to understanding what I call the hidden history of Western civilization. Basically, it's at the root of, because the way that history is being explained now, it's backwards, right? So if we're looking in hindsight, they're trying to present us the history of the evolution of the occult, but present it as the evolution of secularism. So it's as a positive evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, if we examine the history that we've been taught now, we realize that almost every movement or factor that's being referred to is somehow influenced through the occult and primarily the Kabbalah. So if you want to get back to the root and understand where it all comes from, then you have to figure out where does Kabbalah come from. And this is a subject that has really confused a lot of people, because it depends on what your agenda is, basically. But it's essentially a heresy of Judaism that was created in the 6th century BC in Babylon. And it was what had happened is that the Israelites, in large part, had been committed to the worship of Baal. It was the same as the Babylonian Bel. And it seems that there was a section who had refused to, because the exile was meant, in a sense, to it was a fulfillment of a promise, and it was meant to essentially remind the Israelites to return to the worship of the true God. But instead, there was an attempt to amalgamate and justify the worship of Baal within Judaism, and this is what Kabbalah is. And it's mixed in with Babylonian astrology and numerology and these various other things, which then became the source of all occult tradition ever since. And really the secret is understanding is that what happens right after the exile is that there's nothing known about what happened in Jewish literature from pretty much that time for about 300 years before the Bible started to be compiled, or the first works started to be compiled only in the 3rd century BC. So what happens is, where is it being evolved? Where is the Kabbalah developed first? It's in Greece. And, this is an idea that was very well known amongst the rabbis throughout the centuries, that the Plato and Pythagoras and the great philosophers were supposedly all students of the Jewish Kabbalists. And when you study it properly, you realize that it's correct. That it's very evident that the early developments of Greek philosophy were Kabbalah. And this is why we have this focus on ancient Greece. This is why Plato is the great godfather of this plot of this scheme, his establishment of a republic to be ruled by philosopher kings. Basically, it's the ultimate fascist ideal. This is why he's being resurrected by people like Leo Strauss and so on and so forth.
Okay, fascinating. All right, there's a little thumbnail sketch of what the Kabbalah is. When we come back with David Livingstone, we're going to talk about some other chapters in his amazing tour of history, terrorism and the Illuminati. And again, the last chapter ends with a title, Total War. We'll get to that in our conversation this hour, so stay right with us, and we will continue.